And the first tool that you chose to build on top of TrustFall does seem like a pretty hard problem. We've talked about it a little bit at this point, but Cargo SemVer checks is built upon TrustFall and is just a bunch of natural language rules. So why did you choose SemVer as like the first thing to tackle?
Yeah, it's a great question. SemVer is one of those things that I think is very divisive in the community for unfortunate reasons. SemVer is just categorically a good idea. We're just really bad at doing it in practice. The rules are much more complex than they seem like. And so we humans are just absolutely atrocious at doing it. I mean, I've been doing SemVer and Rust for 2 years, and there's not a week that goes by that I don't find a new horrifying way to accidentally cause a breaking change in your own project, right? And so if the bar is you have to get a PhD in semantic versioning and work on it for several years exclusively before you can be a productive package maintainer that doesn't blow up everyone else's projects every so often, then that is just not a good place to be, right? We're not going to get a lot of packages that uphold SemVer, and then we're not going to get the benefits of it either. But if we can get better SemVer compliance without pushing a lot of SemVer learning and unfortunate, tooling friction on everyone, then the premise of SemVer is really, really appealing. I run cargo update or npm update or whatever, and all of a sudden I benefit from thousands of hours of other extremely smart maintainers doing work on their own packages, right? I get performance improvements, I get new functionality, I get security patches, and best of all, I don't have to know about any of it, right? I just ran one command, and then all of a sudden my project is better off, right? So the premise is fantastic, and what's holding us back is our ability to actually execute on it. And when it comes, when push comes to shove, the rules are, complex, but they're enumerable. There's a finite number of them. And if we can build a tool that just checks not even everything, just most things, the things that most commonly are the problem, right? We managed to reduce the problem, the problem's severity by a couple of orders of magnitude. All of a sudden, SemVer is a couple of orders of magnitude more useful to everyone. And there are millions of people that use all of this software on a daily basis. So if we can prevent one catastrophic SemVer break that costs, a few thousand hours worth of lost productivity, millions of dollars worth of, extra productivity have manifested into the economy. And I think that's a really good place to be. And so it's one of those places where a fairly small amount of investment in time, effort, and money can have a tremendous impact on a lot of ecosystem packages, on a lot of maintainers' lives, and a lot of end users' lives. Not just people who program, but everyone that uses that software, right? If we can prevent one unfortunate, CrowdStrike level incident, humanity is better off. It's not just, me, TrustFall, cargo SemVer checks. It's all of humanity, suffered tremendously off of that one incident. And so whatever that we can do to prevent it, I think is worth it.
Yeah, it's such a common problem in the Node ecosystem. Like one thing a lot of people don't have is the engines field declared in their package JSON. And just not having that causes so much confusion. And as a maintainer myself, I don't like having the reason about semantic versioning. Like even knowing that I went from node 8 to 9, that's a breaking change. That kind of takes institutional knowledge that I only have from just working in the field.
Absolutely. And it's very unfortunate that right now, in the absence of tools like cargo SemVer checks, the way that we educate engineers and maintainers about these rules is that we wait for them to get burned by them, and then we say, oh, you should have known this. Nobody told you this. There was no way that you could have feasibly known about this, but you just broke everyone and everything. So, first of all, feel bad about doing it, and second of all, do emergency maintenance because otherwise everyone's broken and upset with you. And that's just not a very friendly environment. So in a very real sense, what I'm hoping to do is, as we all collectively get burned by these things, we should take that expertise that we've hard won by blood, sweat, toil, and tears and distill it into automation so that problem never ever happens again, right? We might not be able to foresee every problem that we're going to encounter down the line, but there's no reason that having encountered a problem, we can't just write, a 50-line TrustFall query, check it into a project, and then say, never again.
So cargo SemVer checks is built for Rust, of course, but could I use the same methodology and tools to build the same thing for TypeScript, I don't think it would work for JavaScript. Too dynamic, but at least TypeScript, we might be able to do it.
You might be surprised, actually. So I have a linter for Python that also does semantic version checking. I haven't published it yet, but if someone listening to this wants to play around with it, give me a ping and I'll help you get set up. I just want to polish some more of the rough edges before I, make a big push. I really hate other people discovering rough edges that I know I could have, found and fixed myself. So I'm a little bit, cautious about that. But if we can SemVer check Python, we can definitely SemVer check JavaScript. And TypeScript is just a strictly easier problem. So I've actually tried to nerd snipe Chris Krycho, who maintains the SemVer rules for TypeScript website, into building some of this. It's a work in progress. I don't think he's fully nerd sniped yet. But if someone wants to build a SemVer checker for TypeScript or JavaScript, hit me up and I'd be very happy to help you get started with using TrustFall and making that possible. I think it's not just viable. I think it's less difficult than it might appear at first glance. I think this is one of those feels intimidating until you really dig into it, and with a little bit of perseverance, just about anyone could do it.
There are some problems. I guess the big thing for SemVer is it a breaking change or not? That's the big question, right? Because that's the thing that's most important. But there are some SemVer questions that are more semantic. It's is this a bug fix or is it a feature addition? It's minor patch, and maybe I guess is the position just in this is that's kind of a less significant decision and more of a human decision to make.
Yeah, and even for what is breaking and what is important, there are certain cases where it makes sense to allow a breaking change. Like if a maintainer found a critical security vulnerability in their package, and the best way to fix it is by breaking the ecosystem because it's just that bad, we don't want to stand in the way of that, right? We want to tell that maintainer, hey, by the way, this is breaking. You have the full information that is necessary to make a good decision. What decision you think is the best is up to you, not up to the tool, right? So we don't want the tool to sort of tie your hands together and say, you're not allowed to do this, period. You have no choice. The framing that I really like is when a maintainer uses this tool, the tool should give them all of the information such that they never feel like they made a decision that they later regretted because they didn't have the information that was necessary to make a better decision. Right? So minor versus patch, in my personal opinion, not that important. I think preventing major breaking changes that cause a lot of friction and frustration is more important. We do have some of those, this is a minor change, but it might cause frustration, so you should maybe think about it in cargo SemVer checks. I definitely think those are worth building. It's just a question of where do you allocate resources and priority. So right now, most of the resources are spent on this is a major breaking change for sure, or this is with very high probability going to cause a lot of friction, even though technically it's allowed under SemVer rules. The SemVer rules are very complicated and sometimes very hazy, and so it's good to flag some things where people might want to exercise some more care and judgment. Hey, this is technically not breaking, but if you revert this commit, that will be a major breaking change, so maybe tweak the code to do something else now, so that it's a little bit safer in the future if you change your mind or make some other kind of change, right? So it's not just SemVer, it's just in general, am I going to regret this down the line?
Do you guys implement Magic 0, where you're in the version 0 and breaking changes aren't actually breaking changes?
So Rust is very interesting about that because the way that Cargo implements SemVer is that even 0.x packages have SemVer responsibilities. Cargo actually ignores leading zeros. So 0.1 to 0.2 is considered a major change, but 0.1 to 0.1.1 is considered a minor.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
And so, yeah, it's one of those things that a lot of people, even in the Rust ecosystem, don't necessarily know. So being a Rust tool, Cargo SemVer checks implements, the Rust rules. But obviously for Python, for JavaScript, for TypeScript, we would want to adhere to whatever the ecosystem's rules are. And at the end of the day, for a lot of stuff, even within Rust, the community doesn't necessarily have a consensus on which types of changes have to happen when, right? If you bump the minimum supported Rust version for your package, should that only happen in major release boundaries, or is minor okay, or can it happen in a patch? different packages have different norms. And so in that case, cargo SemVer check says it is the maintainer's responsibility to communicate through setting the configuration options what they're willing to adhere to. And then cargo SemVer checks will apply that. But the config is also machine readable. And so downstream users and tools can read that and understand which things are guaranteed on which releases.